to the eminent panelists. We welcome Dr. Bar, Managing Director, Hapco Private Limited, Mr. Amiv Sharma, President, Shri Baidyanath Ayurved Bhavan, Mr. Debashri Dattagupta, Managing Director, East India Pharmaceuticals, Dr. Sonali Mukherjee, Senior Ayurvedic Medical Officer, Government of West Bengal, and Dr. Sudipta Roy, Managing Director, Powell Group. We once again, on behalf of Indian Chamber of Commerce, we welcome this set of very eminent panelists for this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, today India is poised for a transformational revolution in many sectors. The COVID-19 pandemic is not only a big challenge, but it has also given an opportunity to rediscover and reposition our approach towards healthcare and wellness. People are getting more interested and attracted towards the traditional Indian systems and practices of wellness. A new, innovative and integrative strategy for the healthcare sector is definitely called for and is the need of the hour. I would say this as an historic opportunity for India in general and the Indian traditional healthcare system in particular. Now, how India is going to respond to the challenge as the world is increasingly becoming an interconnected global village is something to be seen. The government of India's clarion call, Atmanirbhar Bharat, can be leveraged as a time-given opportunity to reposition the Ayush sector. Now, how the government and the private sector are going to welcome new investments in the Ayush sector, both from domestic and foreign players, is another important area. Export potential of Ayush products and services to ASEAN and CIS countries, in addition to the United States and Europe, needs to be tapped. There is a necessity to further evolve and strengthen the mechanism to train and nurture MSMEs, micro, small, medium enterprises in the Ayush sector. Now, with these initial remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I have pleasure in inviting and in welcoming Dr. D.S. Bar for his address. Now, Dr. D.S. Bar is someone who doesn't need an introduction. Dr. Bar is a legendary name in the homeopathic world and is someone to whom the industry always looks upon for his wisdom and guidance. Over to you, Dr. D.S. Bar. Dr. D.S. Bar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Giri. Thank you for introducing me here, and good afternoon to everybody. Though I'll be speaking on homeopathy and its role in the present pandemic situation, I'm not a homeopath by profession. I got my PhD degree in organic chemistry, and after completion of my postdoctoral research for 2 more years, I joined Hapco, taking charge of the research and development department, and at present, I'm the managing director of the company. I'm also serving the country as a member of Drug Technical Advisory Board on Homeopathy, a member of the Pharmacopoeia Commission for Indian Medicine, and a member of Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia Committee, and few other central government committees on homeopathy. Now let me come to the point. For long, homeopathy was regarded as a pseudoscience. The skeptics always argue that dilution level of homeopathic medicine is so high that according to classical science, no molecule of the original drug material can exist in the dispensed medicine. So the skeptics were always saying that there is no medicine at all. Till yesteryears, homeopathic medicines could not be tested in a laboratory, as no instrument available at that time could detect and differentiate homeopathic medicine from pure alcohol or water. But the situation has changed now. With the introduction of very sophisticated and accurate instruments, now we can show that homeopathic medicines are not merely alcohol or water. Research work conducted at the premier scientific institutions of the country like Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Bombay IIT, IIST Shibpur, CISR Jadavpur in association with Physics Department of Jadavpur University, as well as other universities and research institutions of USA, Russia, UK, Germany, Brazil, etc., are showing very promising results. As the time is very short, and this is not the correct forum to discuss the scientific findings here, let me shift our views to other aspects. In spite of all skepticism, apart from mainstream system, sorry, just a minute, please. Apart from mainstream system, homeopathy is the most sought after therapeutic system among all other alternative systems. That means majority of the population of the world still seeks homeopathy as the preferred alternative treatment method. Here I'm proud to say that even over Ayurvedic homeopathy stands in the World Forum. Now let us go for SWOT analysis for homeopathic pharmaceutical industry, as SWOT analysis is regarded as nowadays most mandatory for any industry. The very word SWOT, S-W-O-T analysis, means analysis of strength, thus S stands for strength, weakness, W stands for weakness, opportunity, O stands for opportunity, and threat for the system, T stands for threat. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello.
Sorry about this. Excuse me, Mr. Venkatgiri. Please put that on mute, please. Yeah, Dr. Bhaur, you can carry on, please.
Yes. Now, as talking about SWOT analysis, the strength, safety and less risk of adverse side effects associated with homeopathic products are driving the market. According to National Health Scheme of the UK, homeopathic remedies are generally safe and the risk of a serious adverse side effect arising from taking these remedies is thought to be minimal. This means when used appropriately under the guidance of a qualified homeopath, they can be taken by people of all ages, including babies, children, geriatric people, and also pregnant or breastfeeding women. Homeopathic drugs are nowadays considered to boost immunological response, and as such, global homeopathic product market is expected to grow to a rapid pace during the pandemic period, as because now it is treated as the immunological response system. Now the weakness, of course, there are weaknesses, and we shall have to convince the scientific community with more scientific research data that homeopathy benefits everybody. Opportunity. The opportunity is sky high. The market for homeopathic medicine is expected to expand due to an increase in the awareness regarding homeopathic medicine and rising prevalence of lifestyle-associated diseases such as obesity, diabetes, and reproductive health. The global homeopathic medicine market is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 12.5% by 2023. The market shows growth potential in India, Mexico, and in the Middle East nations, as also in the USA, which may become the largest market for homeopathic medicine, owing to rising awareness about homeopathic treatment and increasing use of homeopathic medicine. You know, once USA was the hub of homeopathy, it was called the hub of homeopathy. It was decreasing there, and now it is increasing again in the USA. Furthermore, homeopathy has a substantial presence in the United States healthcare system. Europe also has a large market owing to rise in the number of homeopathic practitioners, use of homeopathic medicines by people for day-to-day healthcare, and according to the Commission of European Communities, 100 million European Union citizens, that is 29% of EU's population, uses homeopathic nowadays. And UK is the largest market for homeopathic medicine in Europe. Let's come to Asia Pacific. In Asia Pacific, rising demand for alternative medicine such as homeopathy and Ayurveda, the prevalence of chronic diseases such as diabetes and obesity, and increasing in the adoption of medicine from natural resources drive the market growth. India now is the largest market for homeopathic medicine in Asia Pacific, owing to its largest homeopathic infrastructure in the world and increasing in the number of homeopathic medical institutions and research institutions. Japanese Homeopathic Medical Association is engaged in academic research, promotion, and international exchange of homeopathy. And they are proud to know that Japanese Medical Association they are now in touch with India for promotion of their homeopathic products. Whereas homeopathy is relatively unknown and moderately practiced in China. The Middle East and Africa also shows a steady rise in the market owing to increasing awareness for physical well-being, increasing problem of constipation, and availability of homeopathic medicine in the market. Iran and Saudi Arabia are the countries where homeopathy is mostly practiced as compared to other regions in the Middle East. African homeopathic medicine market is also showing a steady growth. I've talked about the opportunity, but what about the threat? Yes, threat is there also. Restrictions on use of homeopathy in selective countries can impede the global homeopathic medicine market. There are so many, so many people are saying something, saying against homeopathy, and that is sometimes they're driving the government to take action against homeopathy. But now it is being reversed. The government is understanding that homeopathy can be a lot for their own country and for their own citizens. Reasons for the growth of the market are lack of awareness of homeopathic medicine in developing countries and strict regulatory requirements governing the use of homeopathy in developed countries. Now, what homeopathy can do under this pandemic condition, because we are talking about this pandemic condition. These days will be entered in the history books as corona crisis, less from the medical, but rather from economic point of view. With all the constraints and sacrifices the broad society is suffering, as till date, no allopathic medicine has been evolved for preventing or treating, and the focus now is on improving medical care by providing sufficient number of intensive care beds and medical ventilators only. There's no treatment for them. But the history of homeopathy is well marked with its achievement in treating patients successfully during so many epidemics. To start with the scarlet fever epidemic of 1801, when one of the claims made by Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, was that homeopathic belladonna can protect people from developing scarlet fever. In an article published in the Lancet of that time, Christopher Hufland, the greatest German physician, said that the proper use of belladonna has in most cases prevented infection. This way, the cholera epidemic of 1831 also led to a soaring approval of homeopathy when camphor spirit was used as a therapeutic drug, as also a protective agent. In the earlier years, homeopathy showed its utility and strength by controlling several other epidemic conditions. In the present scenario, when the so-called modern system of medicine finding it difficult and are in a fix to suggest medicine either for prevention or for treatment, by using only one single medicine, arsenicum album, as our data, only 0.1% are coming positive against 6.2% who did not take arsenic album in containment zone. I repeat, only 1% are coming positive against 6.2% who did not take arsenic album. This is the in containment zone. By calculation, it comes to 84% protection rate. In a very recent published news, the Gujarat government claimed success rate of more than 99% protection rate by using this arsenic amalgam. Homeopathic medicines have been found to be effective to cure a number of COVID-19 patients in Hong Kong. Though the government of India, under advice of ICMR, is not allowing homeopathy to show its full strength, but in spite of this, within very limited opportunity, homeopathic physicians are showing their mettle in treating those COVID patients who are under in-house isolation. Even a number of allopathic physicians are taking help of homeopathic treatment nowadays. With these few words, I wish to conclude my talk here. I thank everybody for the patient hearing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raj, for the message.
Nothing is audible. Nothing is audible. The problem is occurring again. Nothing is audible.
Hello.
Mr. Venkatgiri, you're not audible. I think you can go back to your earlier mode. That was better. In the meantime, may I request Mr. Amev? Hello. Yeah. In the meantime, may I request Mr. Amev Sharma, President Shri Baidyanath Ayurved Bhavan, to share his thoughts. Mr. Sharma.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. So basically, very interesting kind of panel, very interesting to hear about homeopathy. I think definitely globally, homeopathy is a very interesting industry. I think in India, it's still kind of growing, but, very interesting what a lot of companies have done globally in homeopathy. My sort of focus today will be more on the Ayurvedic side because homeopathy is something which is relatively newer to me. So on Ayurveda, I think especially coming from India, Ayurveda being part of our heritage, Ayurveda being something that we've owned as a intellectual property in a way, I think it's very important that in the next 5 to 10 years, we take a ownership stand when it comes to Ayurveda, right? Overall, we would just in a small, we could see that we don't want Ayurveda to go the way of yoga, right? Today, when you go to California and you ask people where's yoga from, they'll say it's from California, right? Nobody even gives us any credit or we don't get any benefit for creating that science and spreading it to the world, right? Be it either in soft power or monetary terms, right? So, today, what is very important is that now what we see globally is that Ayurveda is becoming more and more mainstream, right? So we are in talks with a lot of pharmaceutical companies in Europe, who are doing research based on Ayurvedic products to launch the new product lines. The number one digestion product in Europe today is senna based, right? Which is a very clear Ayurvedic herb. So already in the US, we are seeing explosion of herbs like ashwagandha, turmeric, and we are seeing a lot of R&D also happening around those herbs, right? So I think the big sort of opportunity here is that Ayurveda is something which is becoming global. People are looking at it more and more also from a nutrition point of view, not only a medicinal point of view. So the opportunity is huge. The risk is that just like yoga, it will become global, but India will have no say in it, right? So I think that is what the focus should be from an industry point of view, that how do we take a global leadership position in Ayurveda, and how do we be the companies that kind of take Ayurveda abroad as opposed to other people taking Ayurveda, right? Or usurping Ayurveda. Give you some practical examples. Like 15 years ago, there was a company quite large in the US today called Banyan Botanicals, right? They're all from, New Mexico, the Ayurvedic Institute there. And they came and they worked with Baidyanath for 4-5 years. We supplied them medicine for 5 years. Today, they're a $150-70 million business in the US, but they're a US business, manufactured in the US, IP is from the US, right? So they took IP from India, but it's become a US business now. I think going forward, the only way to kind of ensure that India takes a leadership position in Ayurveda is for the government to actually step in and create an environment where there's ownership of IP, right? And there has been conversations with Ayush on this. I think government has taken steps in making Ayurveda more front and center, making Ayush more front and center, investing more time, energy, resources into growing Ayush. But I think there's a few leaps that need to be made instead of steps, right? And I think the big leap we need to do here is step forward in a global sort of arena and start owning IP for Ayurvedic herbs, right? And this is a very complicated sort of country to country or a government level work. No company can do this, and no company should do this, right? So I think that is one big thing where India needs to step up. I think the second big thing where, we need to kind of really step forward is starting doing more research and development, right? A lot of people I talk to today, they're like, okay, double blind placebo test, why should I do it? We know it works, right? These are for the Western people. Why should we do it? Why should we cater to play their game? But at the end of the day, if you want to be global, I think Ayurveda needs to start looking at itself more as a sort of science and more from a Western point of view to validate it for global market, right? not only kind of just say that people who will believe Ayurveda will buy it. We need to bring about proof. We need to start doing double-blind placebo studies. We need to start doing long-term clinical trials to prove both ingredients and concoctions are useful and can be used in a scalable way. I think the final thing which I feel is very important today from Ayurvedic point of view is that the way I think we saw this happen in China, that the government really stepped in to uplift the entire industry, right? So be it improving manufacturing for industries by giving things like soft loans, sharing expertise, doing government to government deals to help register products and creating a standard for this product registration globally. Things like this is a lot of government help is required for Ayurveda to grow both in India and globally. So having said that, I'll just like to add that there is a lot being done by Ayush already. I think all of these are big asks. I think all of these are things that will take time. But I think all of these are things that also require a lot of industry help and hand-holding and support. So I think the next big step is to create a much better functioning industry body that works very closely with government to kind of ensure that Ayurveda moves forward in the long term in a sustainable way where the IP is still controlled by us.
Right.
Mr. Supal, are we audible now?
We can't hear you, Mr. Venkatesh.
No, sir, we can't hear you. Mr. Sharma, thanks for sharing your views, interesting thoughts, and I think we will kind of get back once we finished with the others, and there would be questions, right? I would now move on to Mr. Devarshi Dattagupta from East India Pharmaceuticals. He's the CEO of East India Pharmaceuticals. I would request him to talk about the aspect of packaging because this is a very important aspect. And if we are thinking of the global markets, packaging plays a very important role. And I think there are also certain regulations that are coming in. And I would request Mr. Dattagupta to talk about this.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Some fantastic points raised by the speakers who have come in front of my presentation, and Mr. Sharma and Dr. Bhar. I mean, both representing some mega brands. We are very proud of these brands representing India and doing well. And thank you to both of them in doing whatever they are doing. Yes, actually, yes, I would talk about packaging, definitely. But before that, of course, I am probably the only one here that having one foot on the allopathic drug industry and one foot on the Ayurvedic industry. So this is something I have always believed that it is very, very necessary to take the Ayurvedic industry very seriously. The people always talk about alternative therapy. It's always not alternative. Ayurvedic has a lot of potentiality to be the primary therapy in a lot of places. For example, with the COVID thing going around, we are always talking about immunity, right? This is the only thing we are talking about. The Ayurvedic segment has a huge offerings as far as immunity is concerned. So I think there should be more awareness of what this segment of wellness opportunities can bring forward. So this is something very, very important. And of course, when we talk about any kind of solutions in terms of medicines or supplements, of course the packaging comes in a bigger way. I represent the Indian Institute of Packaging's Eastern region. And being a part of that, I have learned a lot of things that why it is very, very important. Now there are few points, and again I would not go into very much details because we are short of time and we'll have a lot of Q&A. But the packaging aspect of any healthcare solution is very, very important. Now we know that there are a lot of very strict regulations as far as packaging is concerned with the allopathic drug industry. Again, with the Ayush, and again, I want to congratulate the departments and the representatives of the department and the all the relevant departments in the state also. The Ayurvedic industry through Ayush has also gone through a lot of changes as far as packaging is concerned. And I would not go into the detail because it takes a lot of time. It is readily available on the net. But the regulations are getting stricter. This is, I think, good. It's good for the industry when the high quality packaging comes into the play. Because normally what we say that packaging is a silent salesman, because it is, I think, the first point of contact between a customer and the solution of the product. So before even you can open, say, a bottle of an Ayurvedic tonic or some Ayurvedic capsules or proprietary medicine, it is the packaging that you see first. And it has a very, very big role. It gives you a lot of information. Earlier, I remember that, again, if I may go back to the allopathic drug industry, the packaging for any medicines per se, I mean, as healthcare solution, it was also actually a flat thing, without colors, white, very drab colors. Why? Because there used to be a doctor's prescription, then you're supposed to get it from the store with the prescription, and you're supposed to take it. But now, if you see, the entire concept of packaging for healthcare solutions has taken a major turn. Now you see use of colors, use of different kind of fantastic technologies. For example, take shapes of bottles. I think I know that Baidyanath as a company has been a pioneer in having innovations in packaging, and I've followed their packagings, and we do talk about the innovations and kind of different kind of designs brought in by mega brands like them. It's actually fantastic, because as a customer or as a patient, when you are taking any kind of healthcare solutions, what we say is that a lot depends upon how you are feeling. The mind is very important in this. So the mind decides how long or how quickly you are going to get back to form. So packaging as a first point of contact is absolutely important. And by the way, India has a very, very large packaging industry. So it's not only the importance of packaging in this way, but the growth of any kind of segment in the healthcare segment, be it Ayurvedic, be it Unani, be it homeopathy, be it in allopathy, the industry also grows with us. So this is also very important. And I think for now, the present situation where everybody has gone through quite a challenging time. I won't mention the word tough time. Yes, of course, it's a tough time, but I think it's a very challenging time for all industries where we are all trying to survive. So the packaging industry is also there, and it will grow with the solution providers like the allopathic industry, the homeopathic industry, the Ayurvedic industry, Unani, Siddha, everything together. So the role of packaging is actually very, very important, and there are bodies like the Indian Institute of Packaging working very, very closely with the industry in bringing in new solutions, new technologies. Biodegradability is a huge issue right now with the packaging industry. So that is another place where the authorities or organizations in India, they are working very, very closely to make sure that the waste is limited. So I think this is a very, very important thing. We always keep on talking about the biodegradability of our packaging solutions. So, I mean, overall, the packaging plays an extremely important role, but it is normally, I won't say neglected, but we normally do not talk about packaging when we are talking about any solution. For example, with any medicines, we always talk about whether it is working or not working. Okay, so, but we have to think that there's a huge team of professionals worldwide. They work day and night to make sure that the medicines or solutions that we are trying to take reaches us in perfect condition, it stays stored in perfect condition, and it helps us recover from the kind of solutions we are trying to find out. So the packaging, of course, is very, very important. And also it is also that I said in the first few minutes that the awareness is also very, very important. We need to be aware of different solutions, especially as the topic of the today's session mentions the current COVID scenario. So I think there should be a lot of awareness of what are the solutions we have. We can't only talk about allopathy as a solution. There are a lot of solutions, and I think Ayush is doing a fantastic. I was looking at Ayush's website, and I keep on, reading Ayush's website from time to time to find out what is new is being posted by them. They are trying their best, as Mr. Sharma said. They're trying their level best. I think the industry has a lot of responsibility too to help the department and spread awareness. Of course, invest more on R&D, bring in new products, make sure that our product reaches overseas. Actually, he has said whatever I was thinking at the beginning of today's session. He has said everything. So, but the industry has to do a lot of hand-holding with the Department of Ayush. And there are leaders, brand leaders and companies, and they are doing a fantastic job. We as a company, we are also trying to play our role in both the sectors. So for me, it's a very challenging position where I can see both the Ayurvedic industry growing and the allopathic industry growing together. But of course, as again Mr. Sharma said, it is India's invention. So it has to be India all the time. It is our invention. It is our pharmacopoeia. It is our age-old solutions brought in by Munis and Rishis from centuries back. So we have to protect it. And IP will be very, very important, as Mr. Sharma said. Thank you for bringing up all these important points. It's absolutely, you've hit the nail at the head. And these are very, very important areas that the IP should be there because there are a lot of opportunities now. The market is just opened. India itself is a huge market, and worldwide there are huge demands for Ayurvedic solutions. So we have to protect it. It is our invention. It is India's. I won't say India's property. Of course, it is our invention, and we have to protect it under our laws and make sure that we gain or we stay protected. We reap the benefits of our R&D, and we serve the society as a whole. And of course, the packaging sector will play its role. It has been playing its role for many years. It's also an extremely advanced industry, let me tell you. The packaging industry in India, I am again not going into figures. Sometimes it makes things a little bit boring. Figures can be brought from the net. But the industry is extremely upbeat and extremely modern. The packaging solutions that we use in India for our Ayurvedic solutions are at par with any packaging solutions in the world. And I this is my view that the professionals from the packaging field in India are one of the best in the world. And it is in India that we have a course which teaches packaging. It's a diploma course, and it's the it's the only course in the world that teaches diploma. That is also from IIP. The centers are all over in India. So the professionals are there. We have fantastic HR. We have a young force willing to do well in the packaging industry. We have big packaging companies to support it. We have a very big market. So we have all the ingredients to have a very, very successful industry. And ultimately, it should be helpful to the end consumer so that they reap the benefits of research, good production, good quality packaging products that will end into good quality medicines or healthcare solutions. So, and I just hope that all of you stay safe. It's challenging times, but stay safe and good luck to all of you.
Mr. Sujay Ghosh, am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do we now request the next speaker, Dr. Sonali Mukherjee?
Yes, please.
Madam, Dr. Sonali Mukherjee, please.
I think
Able to hear?
mic is on mute. Yeah, right. Right now we
Okay.
can hear you.
Yeah,
Is everyone able to hear now?
yeah, we are able to hear you.
Okay. A very good afternoon to all the wonderful panelists. The beauty of homeopathy is said by Dr. Bhaur sir. It's really very impressing that homeopathy is working so wonderfully. I have myself taken arsenic album and it has till now I'm safe, I'm fine. And thanks to all the alternative, I won't say this as alternative therapy because this is what I believe is a mainstream therapy. Salma Shah has also said wonderful Ayurvedic understandings that we need to extend for the uplift of Ayurveda. Of course, I'm an Ayurvedic doctor, so I don't understand much about business. But of course, the opening of Ayurveda that I am able to see now, I would like to discuss a few points about that. I am, I'm Sonali Mukherjee. I have done my MD in Ayurveda and I have done my MS in counseling and psychotherapy. I'm a yoga practitioner, and recently I'm working as a senior Ayurvedic medical officer in Government of West Bengal. To introduce with what Ayurveda is, Ayu and Veda, a science of life. What does this say? Swasthasya swastha rakshanam, aturasya vikara prasamanam cha. This is a very basic slok which we read in the starting of our BMS degree. Swasthasya swastha rakshanam means the preventive aspect of a health. Swasthasya swastha rakshanam, the preventive healthcare aspect of a swastha vyakti, and aturasya vikaram prasamanam cha, which means that when a person is an atur or a patient, we will cure the disease as well. So it is a holistic approach which take care both of curative aspect of health as well as preventive aspect of health. So how does this Ayurveda help in COVID-19 situation? We all know COVID-19 is a coronavirus disease which has originated from Wuhan, China in the year 2019. It's also known as SARS-CoV-2. So what does a human body does? It doesn't know about a Zika virus or a coronavirus or a HIV virus. It has some specific criteria how it fights the virus. They recognize that some specific antigen is inside our body. It releases B and T cells. It also produces lymphocytes, which indirectly creates antigen for the antibody. So practically, there is no modern treatment as such to combat this COVID-19. So here lies the beauty of Ayurveda, where it helps in correcting the disordered immune system. To continue with, probably the next 6 months we'll reach the peak and we'll come to a cure of COVID-19, but the preventive aspect will also remain the same that it has evolved now. Wellness was actually slowly becoming a part of our daily routine. Millennials are now more concerned with lifestyle focus. COVID-19 global surge potentialized the value of a great healthcare approach, which is more preventive oriented. So to capture a plateau to the hype of preventive healthcare system, if medicine and healthcare sectors join hands, herbal medicines can reach its peak. So from preventive aspect, why should we need Ayurveda as an uplift? We all know that Ayurveda is God's own medicine. It has come from nature and it gives all the cure of the diseases that comes into surface. Around right at this moment, there are 6,600 herbs which are readily available in India. People are also tired of potential health damages that modern medicines are providing. Ayurveda medicines are readily available in the market in the form of tablets, gels, liniments, capsules, ointments. So it is very easily palatable. It is very easy to take. It's also that in a global aspect, it's very easy to get to provide all the people of global aspect that it is provided as a healthcare supplement. Like in USA, in Europe, in Russia, every person without a prescription is taking Ayurvedic medicine, which is of course has a negative side, but it is a well-known fact that they are taking and they are getting its benefits. I would like to discuss some wonder drugs that I have seen in my practice and have studied that these 10 to 11 drugs have a combination effect into all the organs in our body and all the organs diseases. To start with ashwagandha, it has a immunoboosting strategy, it has anti-aging property, it helps in joint pain, it also helps in insomnia. So a single drug ashwagandha can itself work miracle in a number of diseases. Similarly, the second drug is Arjun, which we often say as Arjun Gacher Chal or Arjun Twak, which is a wonderful drug for all the cardiovascular diseases such as hypertension, such as chest pain or angina, such as high cholesterol. Shunthi or the dry ginger, it is also a miracle drug that we have often prescribed in our clinics. It has anti-inflammatory effects and it improves digestion. It has antibacterial effect too, where if I am having any kind of infection, only Shunthi itself can cure the disease. Guduchi is a fourth drug, which is a simple climber, but it has wonderful effectiveness in protecting the white blood cells, which again combats infection. Another drug is Vasak, which is often given in cough and cold, but it has a variety of effect other than cough and cold. It can cure bronchitis, it can cure asthma, it can also cure excessive bloodletting, or the disease that we can say is Raj Yakshma, what we used to treat in the previous days. Even the bloodletting also is controlled by Vasak. The next drug I would suggest is Skalmeg. This is a very common drug we often take even probably in our food also. It is a wonderful digestive stimulant, hepatoprotective. It helps in purifying the blood. Another drug I can't miss is Brahmi, which helps in a patient of probably all psychological disorders. It acts as a health tonic and a memory enhancer. I can't miss the osteoarthritic part of a disease, which is a major problem in old ages. So Shallaki or Boswellia serrata is a wonderful drug, has been prescribed through ages, and it shows actually real effect in rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis and all kinds of inflammatory diseases. Next is Gokshur. This is a very common medicine in rural areas. It covers the kidney disease, all sorts of urinary infections. It helps in boosting sexual wellness. This is also a total package of drug. Triphala, we can't miss Triphala because it has a combination of 3 drugs, Amlaki, Haritaki and Vivitaki, which is a potent antioxidant, a proved antioxidant, and it boosts to detoxify our body. Last to conclude with, it's Haridra. This is a very common drug we everyday use in our kitchen, but it is an unknown fact that it can help in number of diseases like gastric, hepatic, blood disorders. It can help in skin allergies, so innumerable diseases. These are few drugs that I personally have prescribed and have taken. Other than these, there are few drugs which are internationally accredited and are produced in the other countries, such as St. John's wort, ginseng, ginkgo biloba, or echinacea. These are all USA based. Few drugs are Chinese based, like ginseng and ginkgo biloba. St. John's wort is a European based drug which has innumerable effects inside our body. But personally, I would like to stick to my country's medicines because of several reasons. One being, it is grossly cultivated. So this is a major concern because when a person starts getting benefited, they'll always want the uninterrupted supply. For this uninterrupted supply, of course, we need a gross cultivation, which actually is happening. Next is the benefits and practices of these 11 drugs that I've said has been already prescribed probably 3,000 years back, and it's already mentioned in the manuscripts. It's not just verbal, but it's very beautifully mentioned in which time, at what dose, at what dosage we should take these medicines. So it's hence proved. We of course need a greater sanitization reports, but we can at least rely upon that our big ancient sages have already mentioned these drugs. Okay, global consumers are in need of this drug. In my personal experience, I've seen that global consumers have personally say that I'm benefiting from Shunthi, I'm benefiting from Haridra. Please give a potent supply. So this is also a concern I have personally faced. Another is a wonderful thing that is happening is we are backed with several clinical research. Herbal medicines are just not traditional medicines. It's not just I'm prescribing, take Haridra, it will cure this. It's not like that. It has wonderful clinical research behind that. Number of pharmaceutical companies working behind that, and there are labs, research labs, which have already established that the chemical components of these medicines are working miraculously. Lastly, I would like to say that its vast availability. There are innumerable neem trees, there are innumerable aloe vera trees, aloe vera plants, there are innumerable amlaki, haritaki, vibhitaki. When there is so much supply in our nature, why shouldn't we take it? So being an Ayurvedic doctor, what I feel is probably if we stick to 10 to 15 drugs, it's all done. We can cure number of diseases, not only the preventive part, also the curative part, not only the chronic diseases, also the acute diseases. Suppose I'm suddenly having a sneezing, I can take a medicine and immediately I can cure the sneeze. This is how Ayurvedic medicines work. Of course, I will want that with a good conglomeration, a betterment of Ayurveda, a betterment of homeopathy and Ayush takes place. Thank you one and all for your patience hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Sonali Mukherjee. It was very nice to have your talk, that too particularly the closure when you said about an integrated approach of having some Ayurvedic along with homeopathic. I think that kind of integrated approach is the need for the hour. Mr. Sujoy Ghosh, can we now request Dr. Sudipta for his address, please?
Absolutely.
Dr. Sudipta.
Hello, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Thank you, Mr. Venkat Giri. Thank you, Mr. Sujoy Ghosh, for giving me this opportunity to speak. It's an honor to speak in front of my mentors like Dr. Bhaur and Mr. Datta Gupta. And it's a really honor, and it's my privilege to share the platform with them. And I was hearing all the panelists. They were really brilliant. Mr. Sharma, Dr. Mukherjee, Dr. Bhaur, as usual, he was so informative and so much of knowledge he shared with us. And there was Mr. Datta Gupta, who gave us light about the packaging industry and the impact on Ayush. So I would be just saying something about Indian wellness. So that today's topic is relevance of Indian wellness sector. So the word wellness, it's not only just from the journey to illness towards health, but it's beyond. Beyond means if we want to describe it as what is wellness, wellness is the holistic approach of treatment. So in this holistic approach, according to Western concept, holistic approach, the holistic way of treatment or the holistic medicines, they consider the trichotomy of health. The trichotomy of health means body, mind, and spirit. In all the holistic medicine sectors, like that of Ayurveda, the spirit, the concept of this body, mind, and spirit, the spirit is known as the prana, and in homeopathy we call it vital force. So the spirit is the energy which we talk about. So this is the Western concept, but Indian concept of wellness is 5-dimensional. It's not just a trichotomy. It's a 5-dimensional approach. The holistic approach of treatment is 5-dimensional approach. What are the 5 dimensions which we consider in an holistic treatment or in wellness therapies? The first is our anatomical body. The body which which we perceive, which is made up of food. In Ayurveda, it is known as the Annamaya Kosha. Annamaya Kosha means Anna means food. It is the heap of food which we have gathered. So treatment of this dimension mainly focuses on food and nutrition, and in any anomalies that need to be restored, here comes the relevance of medicine. So in the 5 dimension, medicine comes only in the only the first dimension, that is the anatomical body. Next comes the physiological body or the physiological dimension of an individual, which in Ayurvedic science we describe as the prana or prana shakti. There are 5 types of pranic energies, and in homeopathy we find in Hahnemann's organon of medicine the theory of vital force. So this is the pranic dimension, or the physiological or the energetic or biochemical dimension. This is the second dimension. Here comes the relevance of holistic medicines. The holistic medicines are those medicines which does not have a negative effect on the vital force, which revitalizes or regenerates the vital force. These medicines can be termed as holistic medicine, be it Siddha, be it Ayurveda, be it homeopathy, be it Unani. Whatsoever medicine, even food, which is the primary medicine which we can have. There are a lot of things which are negatively pranic, and there are a lot of things which are positively pranic. So holistic approach of treatment, if we are not treating with medicine, but it can also be done through correction of lifestyle and food habits. So these foods or these medicines which we use, which revitalizes the physiological dimension, can be termed as holistic medicine, otherwise not. That is the reason synthetic medicines, when we use it in emergency, the synthetic medicines or the antibiotics or other chemicals, they are not actually in sync with our system, and that's the reason we call them physiological drugs, and they are not having a positive effect on this. They can recover or restore the anatomical body, but physiologically they suppress our prana. So that's the reason we have described certain medicines which are positive to the prana or the vital force is as holistic medicines. Now comes the third dimension. So third dimension is the psychological dimension. The psychological dimension or psychosoma, the mind body. The word psychosoma means mind body. So in today's medical science, it is evident, and there are a lot of scientific evidences and a lot of researches are going on, and the scientists came in conclusion that 75% of diseases are psychosomatic in nature. They are psychosomatic in origin. Most of the lifestyle diseases are psychosomatic in origin. So this dimension of psychological body, or the psychosoma, homeopathy has a lot of relevance in here. As Dr. Bhaur was saying, that the potentization of medicine, the minuscule, the presence of medicine is minuscule. It's in a dynamic plane. So these dynamic medicines act on in this psychological plane, in the psychological aspect. So here comes the relevance of homeopathy. So initially, we were talking about the first dimension, the anatomical body, where the relevance of the holistic medicines were there. then the implications of holistic medicines, whether those medicines are holistic or not, that can be judged in our second dimension, that is the physiological dimension. If it is revitalizing the vital force, then we can term it as holistic medicine. And in this second dimension, it's very pertinent to mention that yoga has a very big role. Yoga has a positive impact in rejuvenating or revitalizing the pranic energy or the vital force. So, the medicines, yoga, and exercise, lifestyle modifications, and then comes the relevance of homeopathy in the dynamic plane, in the mental plane. And in this mental plane, we cannot undermine the effect of yoga. Yoga has a different level of, it has shown lot of positive effects, lot of positive effect in controlling or in managing the psychological dimension of health. Meditation, which is a part of yoga, or you can call a step ahead of yoga, can be a very big tool to control or to regulate the psychological plane. Now, beyond this mind, there are also two dimensions which our Indian wellness segment can describe. Mind has its own limitations. It is limited by time, space, and position. Beyond that dimension, there is certain intelligence which is acting, which is not influenced by the external impressions. We call it wisdom. So this is the fourth dimension, wisdom or pure intelligence. So this dimension is something which is beyond mind. So and the last and the final innermost dimension, which we call, is the blissful body. As it is said in Ayurveda, Anandamaya Kosha. It is blissfulness. When we transcend from our limitations of mind and we transcend into wisdom, then we find bliss. So I would not be describing about the blissful body and the wisdom body, because that's not the point of discussion in our topic today. So the Indian wellness, paradigm of Indian wellness is not only limited to just body, mind, spirit trichotomy, but also it's a journey to the bliss, inward journey to the blissfulness. And our healthcare experts, the healthcare professionals, need to do this hand-holding from this illness to health to wellness. That's a holistic approach towards an individual. That's the Indian way of, this is the Indian holistic approach. So all of the medicines like that of Ayurvedic medicine, the homeopathic medicine, Siddha, Yoga, Unani, these are the medicines which are in this holistic approach. They are approaching in a holistic manner. So that is the reason it's in the wellness sector. Now there are a lot of integrated sectors which are coming up. So the paradigm of the Indian wellness sector is expanding manifold. We can integrate the textiles. There is a certain products in Ayurveda, textile products. It is known as Ayurvastra. So integration of textile with Ayurveda. Ayurvedic dyes are being used in dyeing the organic yarns, and those products are used as wellness products, it has a tremendous good response in the export market, especially overseas market. So wellness clothing is also an integrated is an integrated sector. Then food. Last day only we were having one discussion in Indian Chamber of Commerce regarding food. Dr. Mukherjee was present there. So food, lot of foods can be used as wellness medicines, like that of tea, organic tea. If it is blended with certain herbs like that of ashwagandha and tulsi, it becomes an immunity booster. So these kind of products can also be integrated. Food sector can be integrated with wellness foods. There can be lot of products, lot of innovations are going on regarding that. And there is another dimension to Indian wellness which can be a big industry, which can come up as a big industry in near future. That is wellness tourism. Why people, as Mr. Sharma was describing, that Ayurveda, it is related to India. So why people would be coming? Why people would be coming to India for treatment? There can be lot of medical spas. There can be lot of Ayurvedic retreat centers. Mr. Venkat Giri must be knowing that there are lot of small homeopathic and Ayurvedic retreat centers in South India. They are working in a smaller manner. But that can be that can be made scalable, and that can be made into a big business opportunity. Because now whole of the world is looking forward towards India. Post-pandemic crisis, you have seen that this preventive care is taking the driving seat. So in this scenario, this kind of integration with textiles, with foods, with tourism can obviously expand the horizon of Indian wellness. And so these are the few of the points which I wanted to share. And for Indian wellness products, Mr. Sharma would be knowing, and Mr. Datta Gupta is also working in export market in a very large manner. So CIS and ASEAN countries are really fond of Indian Ayurvedic and wellness products. So how we need to integrate how we need to expand that. There are experts on this panel who would be discussing, and we would be enlightened regarding this. And post this pandemic crisis, we should be aware that how this preventive care is, how much it is necessary, and how much it can impact in all over healthcare sector. So these are certain things which I wanted to share, and there is a lot of scope in export and in domestic market also, because homeopathy is still a growing science. It's a growing sector. So there are a lot of scopes and provisions. A lot of inclusions need to be done in homeopathy. So we think homeopathy to be a foreign science that has came to India. Yes, physically that is. But if we are studying homeopathy properly, we will find that the 7 cardinal principles on which the homeopathic science is standing, you can find those 7 out of 7 principles are mentioned already in Charak Samhita and other Ayurvedic texts. if you see the individualistic approach in which the homeopathic science is talking about, you'll find that it is already present in our ancient texts. So that is the reason homeopathy is blended with our DNA. And in India, homeopathy is flourishing like anything. It may be the second largest holistic treatment in India, but it is the most fastest growing treatment in India. And sooner or later, we would be taking the driving seat. And hope, let's hope so that we will do so. And there are certain other things that we need to mention, that inclusiveness, that not only in homeopathy we need inclusiveness from the other sectors, but as Dr. Mukherjee was saying, integration, it is very important. Last day also Dr. Kunal Sarkar, he's an eminent cardiosurgeon. He was also talking about integration of homeopathy and other sciences in healthcare in this Indian Chamber of Commerce platform only. So integrated medicine, the integrated way of treatment, the holistic approach is the way of treatment for the future. So let us all join hand, let us all integrate and make a prosperous country with health and happiness everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roy. That was a very passionate address by Dr. Roy. Mr. Sujoy, can we move over to questions and answers, please?
Absolutely.
Sujoy, there is a question for Dr. Bar. Can we move over to the Q&A session, Mr. Sujoy? Dr. Bar, please, is it audible?
Yes,
Dr. Bar?
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you, Dr. Bar. Dr. Bar, during your presentation, you made a point that the homeopathic medicines was one time very popular in the United States, and then the demand came down, and then the demand is now going up again. Dr. Bar, that's a very interesting point. I feel so, particularly given the fact that relationship between India and USA is increasing, and it is definitely moving towards better and better. Would you suggest any specific ideas which can help in the further growth of homeopathic exports, particularly to the US market?
You see, homeopathic medicines are already being exported to so many other countries of the world, especially in the European countries, in the Middle East, or in Far East Asian countries. We're exporting. Now, a small amount of medicine are also being exported to United States as well as to Australia, even to Russia and Japan. Only, but this is a very limited part of export. Previously, USA was the hub, wherefrom we are getting all our supply. Now it is being reversed slowly. Still, USA doesn't have very good capacity of making their medicine. So demand, when demand is rising there, they're asking for medicine from other part of the world. And this is the high time where we can impede USA in this way. I think it's a high time. But there are problems. Problems are there. You know, registration of all the medicinal products are to be done in every country. Homeopathy, the problem of homeopathy is, homeopathy has got a very large number of medicine. Say, even when I say arsenic album, I was talking about arsenicum album. Now, some countries taking arsenicum album potency, every potency has a separate medicine. We are preparing arsenicum album mother tincture and at least 6 or 10 potencies. And if somebody takes all the 10 potencies as separate medicine, it is very difficult for us to pay the very huge sum for our export. We are already requested Government of India to have a talk with other countries so that these medicines can be taken only on the name. Say arsenic album itself is only one medicine, not all the potencies. Once, even in India, some government, especially Maharashtra government, they took the stand that all the potencies are different medicines. But now they've said that no, we've understood the problem and we have consolidated them. The medicine will be known by name only. And now we have already requested Government of India to take right in this matter. As because I'm a member of Drug Technical Advisory Board, the Drug Technical Advisory Board Homeopathy, I have little access to the ministry and I hope something will be done in this respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bar. Thank you for that explanation. Dear panelists, we next have a question to Mr. Ameef Sharma. Mr. Ameef Sharma, please.
I think Mr. Sharma is not here at the moment.
Okay.
So you can move on to. Yeah.
We have a question to Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta, you said on packaging and the new trends that are emerging in packaging. Could you please enlighten on what needs to be done from the government side? What needs to be done as representative of the Institute of Packaging? Could you tell us what needs to be done from the government side, particularly to encourage the packaging of Ayush products?
Sir, my view still will be of course, the government has the major role for the government, which of course they are still doing, but it needs to be done in a bigger way, is to promote industries or the new industries coming into packaging. I mean, if you have more industries coming into the field, I think it is better for everybody because you get more choices. The bigger industries, of course, will bring in new technologies, new methods of packaging, and as we know that the MSME sector for packaging in India is huge. It's absolutely massive, and it caters to a lot of people. So a lot of families are involved in this. So especially if you take, for example, the cardboard industry, the paper and the board industry, it's absolutely huge, and the MSMEs in that area, it's quite big. I can give you a few examples. There are a lot of MSMEs working in Sikkim because Sikkim has a big pharmaceutical manufacturing industry. So there are a lot of local cardboard manufacturing industries or board manufacturers there. So the government, of course, needs to come and needs to give a lot of encouragement to the new players. I mean, of course, the bigger players are there; they're already established. But I always keep on talking about new players. You always need new players to come in and set up their industries in India, and that creates more jobs, creates more options for companies like us. And especially with Ayurveda growing and the industries growing in volume, so you will of course need bigger facilities or factories with bigger volumes, and of course newer companies coming in. So I think the government will need to come here, and of course will need to provide a lot of financial support with schemes, and now it is more relevant because I think we are all hit by the COVID-19 pandemic and its effect for say last 5-6 months. It has been very tough. So I think we will require a lot of time to recover or come out of this. I mean, I keep on hearing from my side that, oh, you are in the pharmaceutical industry, you are well because everybody will have to buy medicines. Why are you getting worried? No, it's not that case. We are also getting affected like all other industries. It is a fact that the patients are not going to the doctors. We are a prescription-oriented company. Our products are mainly prescription drugs. The doctors have not, again, started fully attending their chambers. The OPDs are not open yet. Patients are scared of getting to the doctor's chambers. So it's not that the pharmaceutical industry is all hunky-dory and it's growing and we are better off. It's not that. And again, so we are all in part of an industry. So even if we are selling a little bit, but there are a lot of others, they're not selling. So it is something not to be very happy. I don't think we are happy. We are feeling very much about the industries which are being affected in a huge way, say hospitality, transport. So it's not that we only want to grow. It's everybody grows and then the country grows. So it is not the fact that it's an individual thing. It's a joint thing. So so everybody needs to grow. When the Ayurvedic industry grows, when the homeopathic industry grows, when the Unani grows, the companies supplying packaging materials to those companies will also grow. It is very, very natural. So the government support is very, very important. And the creation of Ayush has been a fantastic thing. I mean, it has made everything more streamlined. Earlier when we had our the Ayush was not there. I'm not saying it was not streamlined at that time, but now, taking into the view the export potentials, the acceptance of Indian Ayurvedics, and of course homeopathic drugs. So it is most streamlined. So Ayush is already streamlined, and I think it should be, continuing this and bringing in a little bit of more support, maybe some financial assistance to smaller companies that are trying to make their mark. I think that is required, and that will always be required for any industry, not only for packaging. I think for all industries as well.
Thanks to Mr. Dattagupta, the point that you made is a lot of financial assistance is required from the government, particularly to encourage the MSMEs. That's the point that you're making. Thanks for that. Now, can we move over to Dr. Sonali Mukherjee? Dr. Sonali Mukherjee, please. Madam, can you please indicate what can be the top 3 Ayurvedic drugs that can be of great export potential? Would it be Tulsi, or would it be any other drugs? The top 3 drugs whose export potential needs to be tapped. I mean, Ayurvedic drug.
According to my view, Triphala might not be a single drug. It's a combination of 3, but there are a lot of health benefits that these combination of 3 drugs can take place, probably from immunity boosting to digestion, from excretory system to brain, from allergies to eye problems, from throat problems to body pains, body aches, everything Triphala can combine in one. Second is Ashwagandha is a 100% drug that has to come within this 3 combination. It has the basic thing is it has anti-aging property. That is probably itself a big sector. Anti-aging property, the anti-aging part is working miraculously for skin, for hair, for everything. But Ashwagandha doesn't need so many things. If we regularly take 1 Ashwagandha, yes, of course, there are few side effects, few problems that not all patients can take Ashwagandha. That is a different aspect the doctor will guide. But in general, Ashwagandha is a wonderful drug. Other than that, in this present scenario of COVID-19, if I would like to say, then Vasak is a drug which covers totally the full respiratory system disorders. Probably if somebody is aged and is 80 years, he is having a COPD, like chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, which is a blockage in the lungs and excessive phlegm production, like excessive cough and wet cough. Vasak will help. If there is a blood coming out from the throat after coughing, then also Vasak will help. There is simple cough that is not getting reduced probably for 3 months, Vasak will help. So respiratory problem from pneumonia to influenza, from COVID-19 to all those related disease, Vasak will give a extensive support in the respiratory system. So these 3 drugs I feel that should come up and emerge.
Doctor, I have one more question for you. As a government doctor, as a government medical officer, if someone is going to say that there needs to be more healthy interaction between the various branches of Ayush, let's say Ayurveda, homeopathy, Siddha, what is your answer to that? If somebody is going to tell you that there needs to be more interaction between the various branches, what would be your answer to them?
Of course, my answer would be there has to be a healthy interaction, because there are a lot of similarities between homeopathic treatment, Ayurvedic treatment, Unani and Siddha treatment. because these are all ancient and traditional treatments which are all scientifically based. So there is nothing that is a rural science, is a traditional science. It's all scientific oriented science which has to come up together, so that there are critical diseases like probably cancer even, we can come up and tell with a loud voice that yes, we can cure. This is a high time that we should emerge together.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Can we have a question to Dr. Bar? Dr. Bar, being the senior most gentleman here, Dr. Sonali Mukherjee has said that there is a need for integrated practice. Would you like to comment on this? Though you come from a homeopathic background, what would be your take? How do we integrate these systems while they retain their individual identities? How do these systems, Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, homeopathy, what needs to be done so that there is a far more integrated approach?
You see, no pathy can claim that it can cure all the diseases. Every pathy has got its own limitation. Even the modern system of medicine, they have limitation in curing any viral disease. They don't have answer to any viral disease. And for those viral diseases, I think taking help of homeopathy or of Ayurveda is the best. So homeopathy, Ayurveda, they have all been integrated in the Ayush system. Though homeopathy is not a traditional Indian system, but still, as the idea is similar, it has been integrated in the Ayush. And so there is enough scope of integration between these two, as because the Ayurvedic drugs, what are being made out of the plants, those plants are also used in homeopathy itself. It is only the question how much quantity is to be applied. So we can integrate these two systems to have an integrated approach for treat the illness and treat the illness and or treat the patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bar. Thank you for that. We sincerely wish that such integrated approach really happens. Dr. Roy, we have a question for you. As someone visiting so many different countries, what do you think is the export potential of the Indian traditional medicine, not necessarily homeopathy alone, but then Indian traditional medicine in as a whole to ASEAN countries and CIS?
If we see, you have already specified two sectors, that is ASEAN and CIS. Already ASEAN and CIS are very much fond of Indian Ayurvedic medicines. If you go to CIS countries, you will find a lot of Indian companies are exporting there. They have their branch offices over there. And even in the certain East European countries also, there is a huge acceptance of Ayurvedic products. If you find in Romania, the largest pharmaceutical plant they have is owned by an Indian Ayurvedic company. One Indian Ayurvedic manufacturer is having the largest plant in Eastern Europe. It is among all the plants, even the allopathic plants and other plants. So it is already, there is a awareness of Ayurvedic medicines. There is already a very good market in CIS. Personally, I have been to Eurasian conferences where there were a lot of Indian companies who were participating there. And in ASEAN, yes, there are a lot of places where even homeopathic medicines are also being exported. In countries like Malaysia, countries like Indonesia, many companies from Calcutta is also exporting medicines there. So there are a lot of potential is already there. As Dr. Gaur mentioned, there are certain registration issues. Suppose in Thailand, they are not able to understand where to register homeopathic medicines. But the Indian community in Thailand, they are very much fond of Indian homeopathic medicines. And while they are visiting India, they are taking a lot of medicines for their personal use and taking them to their respective countries. So, if our government can take certain steps, if our consulates over there, they can they can solve these small technical issues with the respective health governments of those countries, potential is huge. If you see uh, countries in ASEAN like that of Myanmar, is based on the homeopathic, the whole of the homeopathic medicines are going from India. So there are a lot of potentials. The practicing homeopaths in Myanmar are dependent on Calcutta homeopathic companies. Since Calcutta is known as the hub of homeopathy, there is a tremendous scope and provision in ASEAN market because of the geographical proximity. So hopefully, after formation of Ayush ministry would be taking certain positive measures with the other health governments to make homeopathy and Ayurveda and even Siddha to be accepted by their governments. Many of the European countries and in USA, the Ayurvedic medicines are taken as food supplements, but they are not being recognized in the mainstream medicine. Especially in USA, US FDA does not recognize as the Ayurvedic medicines or homeopathic medicines as medicine. Either they are using it as a supplement or they are using it as alternative medicine. So our government has to take that initiative, and time immemorial, we know that CIS countries and ASEAN countries are always, they have always been the good market for Indian products, not only medicines, but in all kind of products. So let's hope that government take these cognitive steps so that we can export more medicines to these countries.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Thank you for that. Mr. Datta Gupta, Mr. Datta Gupta, please. If you can please relate to East India Pharmaceutical being a very large Ayurvedic drug manufacturer also. If you can relate to what Mr. Sharma said. Mr. Sharma said something very interesting, that what happened to yoga should not happen to Ayurveda. Would you like to elaborate a little on that?
Yes, actually, I fully believe in what he was saying. I'll just give you a few examples that I feel that there is always a tendency when something that you are an expert in or you own something is not understood by somebody else. And there is also a tendency to to modify that kind of technology to suit a different company's regulations and needs. Okay, so I'll give you a small example. In a lot of Ayurvedic preparations, you know that there are multiple ingredients, right? So while exploring opportunities in the West, so we were being told that we do not understand the fact that why do you need 34 ingredients in one solution. We don't understand. And I remember telling them that it is not something you would understand easily, because it is a science and it has been brought from generations to generations in a country like India. It's a specific science. You need to understand the reasons and the situations behind the formulation of one kind of drug in our pharmacopoeia or the Ayurvedic science. So now, what they have done is, as far as I remember, in the West, if you need to bring in some specific kind of medicines, there are restrictions on the ingredients. It is sometimes 4. I think it was 4 in USA for a long time. Now they have always, I think they are now trying to find out 3 now. In a lot of places, it's a single ingredient drug. So sometimes it might not even work. If you are trying to have 1 in place of 29, it might not work there. So there has always been a tendency in, modifying that entire science to suit a different country. Maybe they don't understand it, or they don't want, or they find it difficult to standardize that kind of 23 or 29 ingredients. But the fact is that a science or a system that belongs to us, it is a time-tested system. We know that it works. And India has made rules regarding it. India has proper, system that supports traditional medicines. So I think that is a problem. So that is, I think, where we should firmly step in and protect what is ours. So there will be instances where there will be efforts of giving it a different thing or changing it. But I think Indian companies and the government should now work together and protect it. It's our science, it is our heritage, and it has to be protected at any cost.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, any discussion on Ayush is incomplete without a reference or a comparison to the modern system of medicine or allopathy. We have something interesting in the United States happening, where the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine has been renamed as the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, where the government understands the future trends. Is that kind of an approach really called for, or how far are we away from something of that kind happening from the government's side? Because I mean, human being is one, healthcare is one. So this would certainly take the discussion towards medical education. I'm not sure whether that falls within the purview of today's discussion, but then, as I just mentioned, any discussion on Ayush is kind of incomplete without making a mention about the modern system of medicine or allopathy. So that being said, I leave this question open, and it's up to the panelists if they could comment on this, starting from Dr. Bar, please.
I have already said that no pathy is complete in itself. No pathy can claim that it can cure all the diseases. So we require integrated approach. It's right. The modern system of medicine, you find in the present pandemic condition, you see what is the condition of the modern system of medicine? Sometimes they are saying give them HCQ. Sometimes they are saying remdesivir or some other antiviral drugs. Nothing is working. The patients are being cured by themselves. But we have definite result with homeopathic medicine. In Hong Kong, some homeopathic physicians, they have showed and they published their results already. Even in India, in Agra, in Agra Homeopathic Medical College, they have showed that COVID patients can be cured with homeopathic medicine. But homeopathic medicine cannot cure all the diseases and cannot take care of all the side effects, what we are getting from COVID or from other medicine. So we shall have to take care of Ayurveda. And when we are taking care of Ayurveda, why will not be taking care of allopathic system of medicine? One thing is very clear. The therapeutic agents and surgery is totally two different kind of treatment. Somebody says that homeopathy is against surgery. No, it is not. Homeopathy is never against surgery. If you break your hands, you cannot join it with medicine. No allopathic medicine, no Ayurvedic medicine, no homeopathic medicine can take the bones in its position. You will have to take the help of surgery. So surgery is also necessary. Not only surgery, in some cases, when we require immediate reaction, sometimes we may take help of allopathic medicine. It may be taken, but what is to be taken care of is that medicine do not interact adversely with the other system of medicine. That is to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bar. Can we request a comment from Dr. Sonali, please?
Yes, sir. Regarding this topic, in today's lifestyle, I have always seen my patients, they're asking for an immediate recovery. Madam, I'm having a pain in my hand. I have to join my duties tomorrow. Today only, any way you have to recover it through some Ayurvedic means. So I have always made them understand that this is not the right theory, because I can give you a medicine like paracetamol or anticlim, NSAID, AID medicines, which can cure your pain right at this moment. But again, just probably after 6 hours and 12 hours, again your pain will reoccur. So please take some patience and have some Ayurvedic medicine so that within 1 or 2 days, of course, 1 or 2 days, not even I'm asking for 7 days, you will get a recovery. So this is offshore that we have such a tremendous pressure of our job. We have a tremendous pressure of our lifestyle. We need some immediate treatments. We can't deny that always. But again, on the other side, the lifestyle disorders like diabetes, like hypertension, these are all occurring for these kind of medicines that we are taking always. Like PAN 40, PAN D, there are people who are taking for 12 years, like 15 years. There are consecutive liver damages that patients are coming to us and saying we are taking medicines as such for 15 years and we are not able to digest food now. So for these kind of changes, we need Ayurveda. And of course, yes, allopathy, homeopathy, and Ayurveda should exist together, because if a person is having an internal hemorrhage, that person, I would never accept, I'll not allow my treatment to give to that patient, because that needs a surgical intervention. And if a person is having an injury in a bus accident, in a train accident, I will always ask the patient to immediately join the hospital, not to come to Ayurveda. So during ancient times, we also had surgery. Shushruta was the father of surgery, but we didn't have so many upgraded mechanisms, upgraded instruments, now that all nursing homes and hospitals have. So of course, there are patients who have to go to allopathic doctors, and there are still patients remaining who have to come to Ayurveda and homeopathy. So this is a clear-cut, separate medical systems we should not bring together into. And again, on the other side, we have to bring together, because when a patient is coming to me, madam, I'm having a tumor, I will give a proper suggestion. No, it's not me. You have to go to a surgeon. Similarly, when a patient is going to a surgeon and asking that, madam, sir, I'm having a knee joint pain, that surgeon should also refer that patient to an Ayurvedic doctor. This is how I think that both should work parallelly.
Thank you, Dr. Sonali Mukherjee, for your comments. May we request now Dr. Sudipta Narayan Roy for your comments on this, please.
Before I comment, I think Dr. Bhaur wants to
yes.
say something. So,
yes, Dr. Bhaur wants to say something.
Yeah. Let him finish, then I would comment.
See, I have an opportunity to go to School of Tropical Medicine to meet the director there. When we told them, in School of Tropical Medicine, one research work was done on homeopathic medicine, and that research work was an immense success on Japanese encephalitis. The homeopathic medicine actually acts on Japanese encephalitis. It can cure Japanese encephalitis very well. It has been proved in that institution. After seeing that, when we approached the director to say, you see, in your institution, you see so many patients with skin ailments. You cannot cure them all, especially psoriasis and all those things. You cannot cure them all. Why can't you keep a separate unit here for homeopathic treatment? As because homeopathy has got some treatment here of these ailments. I'm sorry, we couldn't proceed very well in that way. But in this way, if we can put some homeopathic part in allopathic system, as because AIIMS has got now homeopathic dispensaries in their own hospital. AIIMS is already opening homeopathic dispensaries in other countries, in other states also. So in this way, we wish to have some combined effort to treat the disease. I think that will be beneficial for the human being. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So I have already discussed this topic, that what is a holistic medicine and what is an emergency medicine. See, integrated medicine should be the system of therapy for future, no doubt about it. And we are heading towards that. If USA has started that, there are n number of this kind of clinics all over Europe. I am associated with 2 of such clinics in Europe, one in Berlin and one in United States, one in United Kingdom. And I am associated with Dr. Peter H.K., who is a renowned immunopathologist. These people are already working into this integrated medicine. Now, we have to understand the basic difference between what you say complementary medicine and holistic medicine. See, complementary medicine is something which you are giving a complementary therapy. But the term holistic medicine is the medicine which is revitalizing or rejuvenating your vital force or prana, the second dimension which we were talking about. So whichever medicine, be it homeopathy, be it Ayurveda, be it whatever medicine it is, even medicines which are synthetic in nature, if they are rejuvenating or revitalizing the vital force, you term it as a holistic medicine. So integrated approach is already required, and this modern medicine has a very limited scope. Only in emergency, modern medicine has certain management role. But regarding psychosomatic diseases, 75% of the diseases, most of the lifestyle diseases are psychosomatic in nature. These diseases cannot be treated with emergency medicine. You need holistic approach, you need an integrated approach. And in today's world, we find that lifestyle diseases are occurring in everywhere. It is in, rather we can say it's an household name. We find very few houses in urban areas which is not there is not a single patient who is suffering from either hypertension or dyslipidemia or obesity or diabetes. So these are the diseases which are everywhere. And if you find the root cause, according to the homeopathic science, you will find these diseases have a psychosomatic origin. So the way of treatment would define that how the patient is going to work. Dr. Mukherjee was talking about cerebrovascular accidents. I have a lot of patients personally whom I am treating who are in homeopathy, who are post-traumatic patients of cerebrovascular accidents, and they are now well. They were suffering from hemiplegia. Now they are walking without any support. So this is possible because we have this holistic approach is a different approach, and in this approach, it is the curative approach is this holistic approach. The modern allopathic medicines or modern surgery has a very limited approach. So I'm not demeaning it. It is the only only system of medicine which we refuge to in emergency, but in curative aspect, modern medicine has a lot of limitations, wherein homeopathy or Ayurveda or other holistic medicine has a great role. So we need to educate ourselves regarding this, and all over the world, integrated medicines are going to be the future for the therapies. And there are lot many institutes which they have already started this integrated therapy. And any medicine, be it an allopathic medicine, if it is revitalizing the vital force or rejuvenating the vital force to make the patient cure himself, or cure that person's vital force is been restored, so that medicine can be termed as a holistic medicine. And that approach is an integrated approach where we take into all the aspects, all the five dimensions of human aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Can we have a final comment from Mr. Datta Gupta, please?
Well, I am enjoying the last session even more than it's quite interesting. But what I would say is that I would like to see all healthcare solutions being given the same amount of focus and respect. So it should not only be allopathy and homeopathy. It should be, I have a choice in allopathy, I have a choice in homeopathy, I have a choice in Ayurveda, I have a choice in Unani, and I have a choice in Siddha. So this is how it should be. So I, as a patient or as an end consumer, I have extreme number of choices. And I think this is a fantastic thing for any consumer, that for my healthcare needs, I have a choice, and I have multiple choice in a country like India. So it is, I think, very, very important. And for all of us who are providing these kind of solutions to our patients and getting them cured and making them happy, I think we should be proud of ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Datta Gupta, for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very interesting discussion. Before I hand it over to my good friend, Mr. Sujoy Ghosh, 5 points come up. The first one is, everybody understands, everybody agrees that there is a need for integrated and combined approach, but much needs to be done before we go there. And number two, the government support in terms of financial packages for MSMEs is really called for. Number three, there are real big time opportunities in exports, but then the point number four is regulatory issues will have to be addressed so that both the small and bigger Indian players are able to cash on the big opportunities available. And the last thing that stands out is the Ayush system is Indian system, and we need something, we need to do something concrete to protect it. So if we are going to be so proud that it is our system, then we definitely need to do something concrete to protect it. With these words, may I request Mr. Sujoy Ghosh to take over, please. Mr. Sujoy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Venkat Giri. I think you've summed it up very well in those 5 points. And I think it was a wonderful discussion and various points of view. And I think we've been able to touch upon different dimensions in this discussion. So I would like to, on behalf of the Indian Chamber of Commerce, thank each one of you, Mr. Venkat Giri as the moderator, and all our esteemed panelists for this wonderful discussion. I think there has been questions, and there are still some questions which are coming in, which we have not been able to address. So if it is okay with all of you, I think I have already kind of requested the delegates to send the questions to me if they have any specific, if they need specific answers, and accordingly, according to their, who the question is addressed to, I will send it to you all. And if you could please revert on that, it would be good. It is unfortunate that Dr. Raghu could not join. He's still in the meeting that has been called in the ministry suddenly. So there were certain questions which were addressed to him. I will try and send them to him so that we can get some sort of an information from the ministry. As they say that in any challenging situation, there is also an opportunity, right? So the COVID has brought in a very, very challenging time for all of us. But I think for a chamber like ours, the opportunity is that for these kind of events, we don't have to depend on regional boundaries anymore. We can reach out to people from across the world, and even in terms of speakers, like today there are speakers from so Amev Sharma, he was in Mumbai, Mr. Venkat Giri is in Chennai. All of you are in Calcutta, and if Dr. Raghu joined, he would have been from Delhi. So that is there. And as far as the delegates are concerned, I think we've got registrations from every part of India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, as they say, maybe not Kanyakumari, but South India, some parts of it, and also the other states, but also from various other countries like the UAE, Thailand, and many other countries. So I'm sure there is, and why are they here? Because there is a lot of interest about Ayush as such, right? And I think there is tremendous scope, provided we can take care of certain impediments that we face in terms of government regulations, in terms of other aspects. And I'm sure together we can work on this and see what best can be done to take the industry forward. With those words, thanks to each one of you once again. And I think we should have more sessions like this in the days to come.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Sujal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.